Yeah.
I think there has to be a level where you have to give students space to just use their own brain, and students have to be comfortable with the uncomfortableness of not knowing something and letting their brain just figure it out. And that discomfort, if you take that away, I think it's a huge disservice to our students. Being able to find that perfect balance between AI and the human in the loop is going to be crucially important. That kind of judgment call is always going to be important until AI is perfect. He goes to a factory and the factory members are like, this machine is broken, it's costing us a lot of money, what do we do? And this guy just goes and just like taps on one nail and then says, okay, that's $3,000, right? And then that's all you did. You just put a nail in there, but the guy says, I knew which nail to hit.
I think there's a sensationalized view of this complete overhaul, and AI is going to take over, and they're going to come out of these computers and take over the world. We underestimate the power of human judgment, and that's the conclusion that I've been coming to as I've been listening to people who are on the cutting edge doing this stuff.
All right, welcome to our second episode of, we still don't have a name. It's okay, it's coming.
Yeah.
And welcome to our second episode. And today we're going to be talking about the human in the loop, more in math education and AI. And the reason being is, per our last conversation, is that there will always be, at this point, a degree to which the AI will not perform perfectly and is going to need human oversight. And that's something that I've been realizing more and more. And I really do think that being able to find that perfect balance between AI and the human in the loop is going to be crucially important. And so just to unpack what human in the loop means, and I would love to hear your definition and add color to it if you like, Zach, is that human in the loop is this idea that there's AI and then human, I guess, just is in the loop. I don't know what else to say. So like, for example, let's just say there's like an AI process, right? There's a AI doing a task. There has to be a human in the midst of that task procedure where the human is the final arbiter of that process. So whether it's generated ChatGPT stuff or any AI generated stuff, the AI is going to produce a bunch of stuff that ultimately the human is going to have to say, hey, that's good information, that's bad information, this is what I'm going to take, this is what I'm going to not take. That kind of judgment call is always going to be important until AI is perfect almost to the degree where it's as good as human beings. I guess it is better in some areas already. But regardless of whether it is better in terms of computation and information, humans have the context where it says, okay, this is the information that our student needs or I need, where the AI might just give you so much, right? So basically this human in the loop is the idea that there is a final human arbiter that says, this is the information that I want, and these are the information that might not necessarily be good. And it hugely has to do with judgment. And I think that's also why expertise is so important. Taste is becoming more and more important in a profession. So you and I being educators for 7 years, right?
8 years.
8 years. And then for me, 10 years around and plus. And then I taught in China for a little while. Those information and the expertise allows us to have judgment of information and AI generated content that has to do with education.
Yeah.
And a parent might have that kind of taste, maybe not, because they haven't gone through that 10 years and 17 years combined of just going through so much educational content, deciding and having such robust rationale behind why we make certain decisions the way that we do. And even as teachers, often we think like, oh, like you just go and teach the thing. It's actually that's not like the case. In fact, I always think of it like an iceberg. If you think about an iceberg, you see the tip and it's like a very small tip and you're like, oh, that's not really a big deal. But if you actually look at the iceberg, like with under the water,
Yeah.
there's so much weight and so much depth into that iceberg.
Mass,
where
yeah.
there's so
There's
much mass,
substance. Yeah.
where you only see the tip of the iceberg. And often the level of foundational and in-depth work that we have to do as teachers, that you only see the top, is a lot. And there's a lot of rationality, a lot of decision making, that and experience that we've come to make that small or seemingly small decision. And that's what it is with human judgment when it comes to AI and math. Is that AI and math, or AI can produce a whole bunch of things for you with math, whether it's problem generation or feedback. You ultimately, with all that experience and taste, which is at the under the iceberg, or the invisible part of iceberg, and you say, okay, that's good and that's not good. But it seems like such a simple decision, but it really is not, because there's just so much weight and mass to it. And one more example is this idea of like, there is this super smart engineer guy or like a plumber or something, and he goes to a factory, and the factory members are like, this machine is broken, it's costing us a lot of money, what do we do? And this guy just goes and just like taps on one nail and then says, okay, that's $3,000, right? And then that's all you did. You just put a nail in there, but the guy says, I knew which nail to hit. That's the idea behind the human judgment piece. Yeah, it seems like a very small thing, but it really is not. And so I think that is one of the things that people need to understand. And I guess when people think about, and parents think about AI, is that how important human in the loop is. And anytime that we take the human out of the loop, we are, I don't know, I'm not sure what that looks like. And I don't think it's going to be effective. So those are some initial thoughts when I think about human in the loop.
That's so good. Like, you hit on so many different things in terms of, yeah, like there's a wide gamut of topics in there, right? Like, there's like, okay, like what's the definition of human in the loop? How much human do we need in the loop? You're talking about expertise. Like, what is the role of human expertise? Because if this idea that AI will eventually outperform humans in these jobs, like, okay, so like, what are humans supposed to do? I think there's a sensationalized view of like this complete overhaul, and like AI is going to take over, and they're going to like come out of these computers and like take over the world. Like, there's so many different things in there, and I really appreciate that you touched on all of those. And even that example of an iceberg is a really, really good example. I'll touch back on that. Yeah, you covered a ton of stuff. This is really, really good. I think answering the initial question of like my definition of human in the loop, I think the way that I would probably understand it, or at least the way that I understand it right now, and obviously things change, the expert, that human who makes that judgment, is the one who is determining the final product. And whatever that process looks like, there's a lot of processes, for example, like in grading, even making problems, even making curriculum, right? Like the type of curriculum you go through, there's patterns in there. And so AI is really good at figuring out those patterns, but when to deter, or like when to move on from a topic, when to give a certain problem to a certain type of student, what type of feedback would be helpful for this student. All those different things take human, like, I don't think an AI will be able to figure that out. And I don't know if they'll ever be able to figure that out. That's like actually where I'm kind of standing. I'm like kind of in this spot of like, the replacement of human judgment is, I think we underestimate the power of human judgment. And that's kind of the conclusion that I've been coming to as I've been listening to, people who are on the cutting edge of doing this stuff. So that's kind of like what I would think about. And so expertise is really important. And to that point, right, you're talking about the iceberg. It actually kind of relates to how I view AI and how AI works, because essentially AI, the way that I see AI is that AI is like an internet, is like the internet, right? Like massive amounts of data everywhere. And the AI has the ability to pull that information and put it in a way that is like digestible for humans to understand. But at least from you probably have experienced this as well, AI is not very good at determining which book to pull out of the library of millions, trillions of books, which is the internet, right? And so I think that's kind of where if we define AI with that type of perspective, then it's like, yeah, like you need human in the loop to be able for it to be as effective as possible. Because like, I mean, we can't look at trillions of books and determine which one's the best fit for this. Um, AI can do a very good job of determining or narrowing it down, but like if humans can see maybe choices of three choices of what to go with, then the human decides. The other thing that I was thinking about is actually most AI tools are designed for human in the loops, actually. That's one thing that I was kind of thinking about as you were talking, because like most people use AI, they're thinking about ChatGPT or some other LLM. And so the interfacing is meant to be a conversation, because every single output that it needs a certain human input, right? And so it's designed to go along and aid the human along that loop. And so to expect these LLMs, which were designed for conversation, to be able to do something that is that like, yes, like you can automate that system, because obviously the things that during that conversation would be similar, right? You would have similar things going on in that conversation, but I think that you still need that human input in there. Like there's no way to do that, because the LLM is designed to almost rely on the human input. And that's how its market fit has been, is that it's best designed to have human input.
Yeah. So I think the first thing that comes to mind from what you shared is this idea of nuance. And nuance can only come with context. And AI does not have context to the degree which humans have context. So this is a conversation that I recently had actually today, was that, for example, when we create a study guide for a student, we often think, okay, why can't we just use the AI just to create a study guide for us? The reason why I think it's so important is still to have a human in the loop, even in the study guide creating process, is because there's certain nuance about the problem that the AI might not necessarily catch, because it might not necessarily have all the context. So, for example, like when we're creating the study guide, the student, when they took the test, realized that there was problems that were more difficult than they previously thought. And so the study guide, maybe that they had previously, did not cover perhaps like the more difficult problems, right? There's that nuance that we just can't necessarily, the AI doesn't know yet. That's why we need humans to come in and say, hey, like this part, like that nuance of like there's a difficult problem that's coming in. The AI might not know that, but the human knows that, and human might know that, okay, the next step is not necessarily the AI might take it this way, but the human knows, okay, I know that the AI might take this as the next route, but it's actually this. And there's certain ways about writing problems also, like AI might just put like an 8.5 in there, when in reality you should just put 8. And that 0.5 of complexity makes it so much more difficult for students than if it's just 8. Because we were just working with whole numbers versus decimals. And so there's so much nuance about generating things that I really do think that human is needed at loop period. And so that's the first thing I think. In order to catch nuance, you need human in the loop. And in order for you to have that human in the loop and also nuance, you have to have context. And AI is something that does not have that yet. And then there's like AI context window, right? You could put in more tokens so that you could just give it more context. But we know, actually, I've used bunch of different tools with AI, and then I gave it more context. I'm like, okay, read this 365 page, whatever, and here's whatever. And then now working based on this, go ahead and create this. It glosses over the majority of the text. And so, yes, and now this is going to the second conversation. The second phrase that comes to mind is the phrase working memory. So AI has this feature or this thing, the way that it works is that you have to give information, the right kinds of information to it where it works with that specific information in the forefront of its mind. And then if you give it too much, it just glosses over most of it. But if you give it too little, then it doesn't know it doesn't have enough context to be able to make that decision.
Right.
And even giving what kind of material for the working memory for the AI, the human is needed to make that decision as well. So even like as I'm talking about this, I'm like, oh my gosh, like human is becoming more and more needed in this AI loop.
Yeah.
And I think the third thing that you talked about, which was the input, right? Where it is completely dependent on human input, right?
Yeah.
And I think, and tell me what your thoughts are on this, is that one distinguishing factor between that, like the human user and inputting stuff, and versus the human deciphering and arbitrating, judging the content that's coming, I think are two different kind of concepts. So when you're inputting things, you first have to process and judge the information itself and then be able to do some kind of input. I don't know. Tell me more about that piece. And if you want to touch on other topics that I just shared, just go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's so good. Yeah, I think you are. I've never really thought about it the way that you're kind of saying it, but they are. I think you are right. I think they are two separate skills. It's almost like this is why in English we have reading and comprehension, right? Like there's the actual like mechanic of being able to read the letters, the technique, the technicals, all those different things. But then there's the comprehension piece where it's like, okay, these words actually are implying something or they're telling a story. The way that I kind of see what you're understanding is that like you're understanding that there's this level of comprehension that needs to go on, and there needs to be this processing that needs to go on. But I think, and this is something that students unfortunately don't understand, is that like you can get better at even how you output, right? So like sometimes, I mean I'm lazy too, right? Like I'll just say like, like do this, and then like the AI generates something. It's like, oh, okay, well the AI's dumb or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Like but then really the ability to articulate, and shout out to all those English teachers, right? The ability to articulate and put your words and communicate is very important. Just as like you had something in this has probably happened to you before. It happened to me tons of times where it's like, someone's acting a certain way towards you and it's just all like, dude, why are they acting like that? And then like you talk to them about it and then it's all like, it's because you said this. And then so I thought it meant this. And I'm just all like, I didn't mean that at all, right? There was a misunderstanding in terms of the communication piece. Maybe the words that I was using was not good. And so, yeah, I think that's incredibly important, having both of those down pat. And so like, this is why I actually think that AI, ChatGPT, just like, or I keep using ChatGPT, but any LLM, I think it ties into, hey, like these kids need to be able to think before they actually like kind of process things, right? Because they're just kind of treating it as like they're just getting some outputs. And so like there's no, I mean, I don't know, right? Like because these kids are using it, or a lot of students are using it, in the comfort of their own home. Maybe they're using it on their phone, right? There's a lot of instances where they're probably using it when I don't know, which is, totally okay. But I don't know what's going through their brain as they're using it, right? I don't know what skills and what functions, and maybe they're learning it a lot faster. Do you remember the second thing that you were talking about?
I did talk about the working memory and the nuance. And I think before that,
Yeah.
I do want to touch upon what you shared.
Yeah.
And as you were sharing, a thought did come to mind and actually reminded me of why we even named our app So Meta. And the reason being is there is the person, usually student, engaging with the LLM. So they are almost in like a closed system where they're just interacting with it and they're not thinking necessarily about the meta of how the interaction is actually going. So when I'm interacting with you right now, I'm engaged in this conversation where I'm not necessarily thinking as a third person perspective from a meta perspective on how this conversation is going. Now, once the podcast has stopped, I can now take a step back and think, okay, how was that conversation? How could I have designed that conversation so that it might have flown better? Or we could have done better or tweaked this and this and this. So that is what I call, and what I think we would agree on, is metacognition. And that is the level of cognitive load that the student might not necessarily have the capacity to engage in yet. Now, we want to train kids where they are thinking on a metacognitive level, and that's why we call it so meta, because we are the people who are taking that metacognitive load and then designing a flow experience of conversation that is so fluid and feels so natural, where it is challenging kids and giving them perseverance and building up their perseverance, and also allowing them to critically think, where they're not have to thinking, okay, and even parents too, where they're thinking, oh, is this the kind of, if I were to look at this app from a metacognitive level, is producing that kind of critical thinking and perseverance and the mathematical skills that the students are going to need. And so that's why I think we're called so meta, because we are so meta. We are so meta. Whoa, we're so meta. We're always thinking outside of the flow and thinking on a metacognitive level on how that conversation is supposed to flow.
Yeah, I mean, like, totally agree with that. If we just built, that's also, why I think why we're so passionate about this, is because it's not just about finding the right answer, but it's about building that muscle of how to think about, like, in particular, these math problems. And ultimately then the end goal, right? Like, we both agree that, like, hey, we want this ability to critically think to apply to whatever passion that you're going to go into, or whatever career that you're going to go into. It's really funny, actually, because as you're talking about this, there are a couple of students that are part of our tutoring program that have begun to use Someta less and less. And what's interesting is that, usually from a software perspective, is like, oh no, that's terrible, right? The usage is going down, so we need to find a way to get them back onto the app. And eventually, yeah, from the business side, we'll probably need to address that down the line. But we're realizing that this thing works so well that the kids, their metacognition is actually being trained. And so one of our students, I actually told her, we were doing one-on-one tutoring, and we were getting individual practice problems and everything. And she was the most consistent. And obviously, as a math teacher, having that consistent practice is so important for math. And so she was one of those students that actually, was consistent, turned in everything. And what I saw was that and she would do these voice explanations, because that's also something that you do in your class. And so we just modeled that, and it was very effective. What I noticed is that her ability to articulate, and not only articulate it in a way that's like where the math made sense, but the confidence, and it was almost like her brain was changing as I saw this progression. And so, like, I told her, I was just all like, hey, like, Someta will always be there. If there's a hard problem, of course it's going to be there, but I'm seeing that your brain is actually changing. Your mindset is changing. Do you notice that? And she's like, yeah, absolutely. Like, I think about math just differently. Right. And so I think that's kind of part of the goal, is to get these students, because particularly if they're struggling, that means that they don't have that muscle memory built particularly for that particular whatever that is.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a very interesting point with students who engage with SoMeta or even any kind of different types of apps out there. Before we get back to the video, a quick word from our sponsor, SoMeta Academy. Parents, are you stressed out, tired, and staying up late because you're helping your kid with their math homework and you feel just as lost as they are? And I'm here to tell you, you are not alone. At SoMeta Academy, our mission is to give you and your child the best tutoring experience by giving our human tutors the power of AI so that you can have a stress-free evening and a good night's sleep. Click the link in the description to learn more. And back to the video. And they start getting better at their skills, so on and so forth. And I think that you can get better at skills. So like you are given a problem and you continue to practice it, so on and so forth, which I don't necessarily agree with that method, but you can keep practicing and you can technically get better at that thing, right? And I think AI can help you with that. And even you can come to have greater confidence, which I think is so great. And that's like super cool. That's so meta right now. We get to do that to help build student confidence. And I think one nuance that I want to point out there is that I wonder if that kid, if we truly define metacognition, is to think about the way that they're thinking, it would be to have the students now do the problem. And I think we are also working on this and thinking through this process where it's like, okay, you did it. Now let's take a step back and look at the conversation of you, what you said with the AI and what AI responded. How was that flow in and of itself? And what would you have done better to have asked a better question here? Or what could have AI have said here that could have made that conversation better?
Interesting.
And that's where I think if a kid is able to come to that point where their metacognition becomes so good, where they're now able to design a prompt that is going to help them meet their needs even better, because they're now designing it themselves, then we are going out of business, which honestly is very good, right? We want students to get to a point where they're thinking so metacognitively about these things, where they are looking at, okay, how was that conversation? Now, here's the thing. I even though as much as I believe in the capability of students, I think that's very challenging, especially when it comes to grade 11. I think beyond 11, I think that seems to me more doable. But until then, like until 10th grade, and if you're listening to this and you disagree with it, get angry in the comment section, please. And I'm sure there are different levels. And my experience just has been that around that 11th grade level is where that metacognition really starts clicking in. And then now students can design their own bot of sorts where they're now have enough but here's the thing. One thing that I would push back on that idea is that just because you have a sense of how you would want the conversation to flow does not necessarily mean that you can design a flow between AI that does what you actually want it to do. Because we know our prompting, and our prompting is like massive. It's not something that a kid, maybe if they want to start an AI business, then maybe they will look into it to the degree that we're looking at it. But the amount of effort that we wrote that prompt probably over 2 years, and we kept iterating on it. And for us to then expect a kid to have that level of metacognition that we have and the expertise, then to design a kind of flow where they can just have that kind of conversation, that itself is very challenging. So I think, yes, even in our tutoring experience, we have to teach kids about metacognition and thinking about their mathematics. But then for people to somehow come to say, hey, I can just design my AI bot to do the same thing that you are doing.
Right.
I have a hard time believing that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I totally agree with that. Like, I think the goal, I mean, at least for the current iteration of our business, and I do have some ideas of like how we can like potentially like grow past it, because I do think that this is actually just one piece of the puzzle, is actually adapting the feedback to the student. I think that's only one piece of the puzzle actually. But I can go into that a little bit later. But I do agree that like just in general, like being able to there's so much that goes into curating an experience to allow for that to happen. That is definitely not, it's not easy. There's a couple of companies that I can like, and I can count them on my fingers, that are doing that. And I think if we continue to iterate on those, like it'll help a lot of students out. Yeah, but yeah, like curating an entire experience for a student is incredibly difficult, and any company will say that, right? Like the creating the software is almost like, yes, there's like engineering and the sleekness and like the performance and all that stuff, but like really all of the tech companies that I really look to as like shining examples, they're the ones that are able, their product just provides just a beautiful experience and really solves their problem. And so yeah, I think that's on the forefront of our mind when we kind of go through that. And that's also why it's like, yeah, like it's not just, we're not just throwing this into ChatGPT, and although that is an interesting exercise to have a student like actually generate a prompt based off of the way that the conversation went. Like I'm thinking about that student, I'm sure they'd be able to do it actually, which is, yeah, that's a good test for that. But the math is only going to get harder, but hopefully her ability to process that information continues to grow, and we'll be right alongside of her as she continues that journey to be successful.
Yeah, you speak about curating like a very great experience for students. And I think that's what everybody's trying to do. And what does it mean to have a great experience? And that's something that we are working on. And I know that we talked a lot about SoMeta and what we do. And I think the reason why we talk about so much is because it allows us to help us understand the kind of metacognition and metacognition load that we take on as adults, and also not just adults, but people who've been in the industry for so long, right? And it is because we have that expertise that and us being human in the loop and designing this kind of experience is then what allows us students to have a very curated, personalized, and
I would actually like kind of pinpoint, like actually what we're doing is like, I would just like go out there and just like imagine who's your best teacher, right? Who's the teacher that like sticks out to you, right? Like for me, it was Mr. Fisher. And it was actually an economics class. So I mean, like obviously there's a little bit of a bias there, but it was the experience of having the teacher teach the curriculum in a way that really was meaningful to me, and I felt like I was able to produce something that was like bigger than myself or what I could have done on my own. Right? Like that's what great teachers do. And so like exactly what you're like, I would take it one step further, is that like, you're working at the top virtual academy in the nation, right? There's a reason why that your classroom and those students love seeing you, right? And when I was teaching, luckily I was one of those teachers as well, that like, the students would come in and be like, oh, Mr. Ha, I'm so glad to see you. And there's this level of trust of like, hey, like you understand what you're doing and I trust you with this, and you help me be seen. And I think that's all part of that experience process.
Yeah. Yeah, I think when it comes to a tutoring experience, I think AI is very good, and human oversight and metacognitive load is very important, but also the human connection I think is really important as well, and building that rapport. One thing that I want to pivot a little bit, if that's okay
Sure.
with you,
Yeah.
is one realization that I had was that number one, as I've been using AI pretty often in my classroom and just in my life general, but more specifically on math education, is that I actually see a world where, and MIT did a study where it reduced the level of critical thinking in students. And I actually see why that could be the case. And the reason being, and I mentioned to you a little bit before we started the podcast, was that when the students, if they're not given time to struggle and try the problem on their own, and they just go straight to AI of their choice, even if it is breaking problems down so that it's not giving the right answers right away and not even giving the steps right away and phrasing the questions in a different way, like Someta does, right? Even if it's very, very curated, I think even in that case, it's very important for parents listening to this and people of the world. They need to first wrestle with it, at least mathematics, with their own mind. Now, I think with generating like English content or essays, and I'm sure English parents or English teachers might have a lot of opinions with this. I think it could be good in English where you generate a bunch of content or whatever, or create a draft or something, and then you could pick out, okay, this part I really like, this part I really like, I don't like that, delete, right, so on and so forth. And you could play around with, it's almost like you're given some kind of like first draft, and then now you work on it and then you change it here and there and there.
Just to push back on that, I feel like some English teachers that I've talked to, they actually, even though it's so good for brainstorming and because it's conversational, I don't think any English teacher would say like, hey, your first draft, go ahead and that's okay to like generate it on ChatGPT. Like I would imagine the mechanic of putting down your first thoughts is actually a very valuable process. And like I could be wrong about that, right? Like I'm not an English teacher, but my initial sense is that like, you know, a lot of the English teachers, the brainstorming I think the writing process, the brainstorming process is part of that process, right? And being able to do that. And so like, sorry to cut you off, but like that's just kind of what I'm thinking is that like I mean, if we look at the English or the writing process in general, like that's baked in, like that what you're talking about of like wrestling, figuring out, okay, what are the different approaches, and that's baked into that process. So that's actually pretty interesting. But go ahead, keep going.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out, because I agree with that. I think that if I were an English teacher, I would not want the first step to be, let's go to AI and start generating a draft or even brainstorm.
Yeah.
I think there has to be a level where you have to give students space to just use their own brain, and students have to be comfortable with the uncomfortableness of not knowing something and letting their brain just figure it out. And that discomfort, if you take that away, I think it's a huge disservice to our students and anybody who is using AI. So that is why one of the things that I really want to start implementing everywhere, whether it's Someta Academy or even just in my classroom, is that think time where, and I don't know what the right phrasing for this is, because one of the phrasing that I thought of was use it as the last resort. But I don't necessarily agree with it being the last resort. Like, for example, like I don't want a kid to try the problem and they're stuck, and then now they start going online and they start searching YouTube videos, or they start looking up solutions online. That's just like a waste of time. Just go to AI to help you with that problem. So for me, it's like, what is the right kind of phrasing? And that's something that I need to figure out for myself, is what kind of framework do I need to give to the students where it allows them to have some kind of paradigm by which they know, okay, I think I've struggled enough, therefore now I can use AI to help me with that piece. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I mean, like it's so funny that you put it like that, because you know, in our jobs we deal with a lot of problems. And I do agree that there is a period of time, because we are first using AI as like later on in our age. We know the struggle of just like, hey, like these are certain things that I need to work through and figure out and define before I actually go somewhere else to get some ideas on that. And even like if I do that prematurely, because that's happened a lot, the ideas that are spit out from AI like almost lead me down this wrong path, because it was just like the idea itself wasn't fully fleshed out. And so it gave me a suggestion of as to what to do. And then I implemented it. And then like people kind of look at me like, what the heck are you doing? Or did you even think through that? And it was just all like, I did, but with AI, but then it was probably too immature of an idea before I went to AI to brainstorm and really curate some ideas. And so like, I totally understand this tension. And like the immediate thought that comes into my mind is there being like, I don't know, almost like a pre-screening process involved, but students aren't going to like that. And so, yeah, like I think there is a level of just, and sometimes you just don't know, and you need something to kind of break the dam so that the brain juices start flowing, right? Like there's many different stages, and so it's really hard to identify that. AI can't do that for you. And I think that's the big problem, is that AI can't decide that for a student. And unfortunately, a student can't decide it for them, at least for specific age groups. They might not be able to determine that on their own.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, as you were sharing, one of the things that just came to mind is in terms of how much the AI is about that think time for us to have that. And then for us to figure out that process of what that's going to look like. And so I'm just going to jump into it if that's okay. So
Yeah,
just
that's
like
okay.
a thought that came to mind was that a student, we have to set up the right kinds of environment for the student to struggle. If the environment itself is not set up, the struggle is not very productive. For example, we're looking at a problem, but if the student doesn't know the symbols of what these words actually mean, they have no content to then take the words that they see or the symbols that they see and then manipulate it and change it in the way that they want to, they need to in order to solve the problem. So they first need to understand, what is the thing that I am seeing?
And to put it more simply, what type of math concept is going on here? Whether it be like a linear equation, whether it be a quadratic, whether it be like I need a factor. I know what factoring means, right? Because like I can see like a problem being there is like factor the following. And it's like, I have no clue what factoring is. And so that would be a good way to use AI, right? Like to figure that out. But I see, just to kind of tag in there, like I see where you're going with that. Yeah.
I almost see something that we could design potentially, Zach Luck, is there's like almost two levels. The first level is all it does is help students understand the problem itself. It doesn't even try to help them, give them the next step. It doesn't even help them try to solve it. It does nothing to progress them to actually solving it.
Just gives them context.
Just give them context and helping them understand, what is this problem even asking for? And then it's like, okay, let's talk about this problem. Let's let the AI breaks it down. And it's not even giving any steps to move forward. It's like, let's just understand this. Do you understand this? And once the student understands this, it can say, okay, now let's have some think time. And I don't know what that user interface is going to look like. It's a timer. I don't know. But it's a, hey, let's have some healthy think time.
I mean, it could be like reflection questions or something like that. Map out the approach that you would take to solve this problem.
Exactly.
Or something like that. That's really interesting.
Yeah. And so there's some kind of healthy struggle now. They're able to have that because the right kinds of environments have been created for that healthy struggle. And then now they struggle with it. And then now they're able to, hopefully, because they have the right pieces and they know what these pieces are and what these symbols mean, they can now manipulate them, put them together in a way that allows them to get to the solution or get to the next step, so on and so forth.
I kind of see this in a very interesting way where I actually think that we could the kind of perspective that you're taking is, or like I guess this type of mode in my mind would make a lot of sense for studying,
Yeah.
because you have put in the practice beforehand. You probably have some misconceptions if you don't feel confident about it. And so this actually would make a lot of sense for, like, before you do a study guide or something, go through this whole process of like, hey, what's the context here for this? And then it'd be all like, I don't know how to do, because like one of the students that I had a call with yesterday, he immediately was actually able to dialogue with me and say exactly the things he didn't understand. He's like, graphing. I don't know how to find what is that? The intersections, with two lines.
Oh my gosh. Intersection? The system of equations?
System of equations, right? Like where the solution is. There.
Oh, yeah.
I can't find the solution with graphing, but I can do it with elimination and I can do it with substitution.
Oh my, that's huge.
Right. Like so he knew
The symbols.
Yeah, exactly. Like he knew what he needed to get more context for. So that's what he was asking me for. But he only knew that after he was doing the practice and he was doing the work of like figuring out like, okay, I know that I am supposed to be doing these ones are easy for me, and he's able to group that himself. This one is not so easy for me, and I keep getting this one wrong, or it's wrong on the answer key. And so now I can go to my tutor and ask him, like, okay, I need more context around this. So I actually see that working really well. So like, I can see this being like a study mode, where, I don't see a student like wanting to go through that process if it's, I just gotta get my homework done.
Yeah.
It's 10 o'clock at night, 12 o'clock at night. I just gotta get my homework done.
For sure.
But I can see this being an incredible adaptation and add-in to like, hey, like we created a study guide. Now we're going to go through and get your metacognition up. So when it comes up on the test, it doesn't matter how funky then the fractions or the numbers look. You know exactly what to do when it says graph. You know exactly when it says substitution or elimination. I know exactly what to do.
Yeah, I think when the AI is used to then help students understand just the words themselves before they start solving it, I think one of the things that you did mention is that concept. Like it identifies it's a quadratic, and that's one of the things that it does for some meta. It's not shown sometimes, but in the background, it's like it identifies, okay, this is a quadratic is the main concept, right? And then because now it identified what the main concept is and can interface with the student and give them the kind of language for them to identify what they don't even know. And for student to be able to articulate what they don't know is huge. Like for that student who said, hey, I don't know this, but use the correct language to describe the thing that they don't know, those students can't even do that piece.
Yeah.
Because they don't have the language.
Yeah. And I was surprised. I was absolutely shocked because, this student definitely has been, struggling, and there's other things going on. But like I was, and I told him from the get-go, I'm just all like, hey, I can tell, like you're a smart kid.
Yeah.
Right. And like, just going back to our mission, like I can tell you're a smart kid. It's just, we just got to clean these things up so then, your grade goes up, because these minor errors, they make a difference between and a C.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we can talk more. What time is it?
Yeah, like 10
50 minutes. I think that's enough for today. If any last thoughts you want to end with?
Yeah, I think we were talking specifically about human in the loop. I think one of the things that, just for parents that are listening, that I really want to put out there, you're doing a great job parenting. You're like, I'm a parent too, and he's young right now, but it's like there's so much pressure because particularly in a classroom setting, they get this grade and they're looking at it and they're just all like, I'm failing my kid. Like it's not like their kid is failing, right? Like I feel personal responsibility for that. for the parents that resonate with out there, with that message, and like just like because I feel that pain. Like if you're going through that pain right now, click the link down below.
Do it.
Yeah, just get on a call. I'd be more than willing to like talk with you. I know Jay would be more than willing to talk to you, but yeah, you're not a failure of a parent. This is just, a bump in the road, and we can really help with your student.
Yeah, I'm not a parent yet. Hopefully God blesses me with kids in the future. And I know, I would imagine that your kid means the world to you. And if you see your kid successful, then I would imagine that you as a parent feel a superstar in success. And
it's so funny because and I know that like I'm kind of doing closing thoughts, but like I feel like, there's this profound thing about like parenting where it's like, this is like a part of you that is like out there in the world. And, not saying that parents necessarily, because all kids are different. Some kids are very different than their parents, Oh, I totally see that. But like, there's just like this level of like love and just like you don't like, this kid doesn't have to be a genius, like, but to see them and their confidence down in the dumps, you do anything for a win, yeah.
I think as much as the kid's successes feels like your successes, the kid's failures feel like yours too. And so I think we want to help alleviate that for parents. And I want your kids to be successful in the right way.
Yeah.
And so anyways, thank you so much, Zach.
Fast.
Oh yeah, go for it.
Check me out on LinkedIn. I make some content there, make some short form content. So you can check out my videos on there. I talk a lot about math. Well, not so much about math. I'm more into like AI education, right? Like how to do this right.
Yeah.
And my own opinion. So feel free to look me up. Maybe I'll throw it down in the description as well. Check me out on LinkedIn.
Thank you. Yeah, Zach is starting his social media, and I'm starting my social media.
Yeah.
And if you watch it all the way up to the end, by the way, shout out to Ed Oyama.
Ed Oyama.
And he's kind of helping us with all of this. And yeah, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on and the work that you do for us and for the world, for education. And very much excited to what we're going to be.
See you on the next one.
All right. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.